All right. So it's an honor and a privilege to talk to you about the System Engineering Handbook. Again, I've got the privilege of serving as the lead editor with Tom as my deputy, but we've also got a set of editors that we intentionally reached out to represent all the different diversity of INCOSE. So we've got 3 from the Americas sectors, 2 from EMEA, and 1 from the Asia Pacific sector as well. So we've got myself and Tom. Gary Rodler, who's just stepped down as the INCOSE president, is also an editor. We've got Bernardo from Spain, we've got Odile from France, and we've got Yusing from Singapore, also as part of our editorial team. So we're excited to have that, and we're all going to help answer questions at the end too. So just as a quick, let's just check. Has anybody heard of the System Engineering Handbook? So does anybody happen to have a copy of the System Engineering Handbook? Does anybody refer to the System Engineering Handbook on a regular basis? Has anybody read the System Engineering Handbook cover to cover? Of those, anybody that's not studying for the CSEP and ASEP exam? So this is, but the INCOSE System Engineering Handbook is one of the premier flagship products. It's currently in its 4th edition, which was released in 2015. So it's up for its review and renewal and refresh. So we're working on that as a team. We've established this editorial team, and we want to give you a status of what our plans are right now, but even more importantly, how you can join on this journey. There are ways that each of you can be engaged in the handbook from different perspectives, and we want to talk about that as well. So our topics that we want to talk about for today, we're going to talk about what is the handbook. Just some of you are new to the IW. What is the handbook? How does it relate to other things? You may have heard of other products. We want to just set the stage for what are the relationship between these key different products. We want to talk about who are the main users that we anticipate and what are their use cases. So this is what we base our handbook content on, the engagement with the handbook, different models and things like that. We want to talk about what inputs do we have to date. You may not believe this, but we do get comments on this handbook. Some people like it, some people don't like it. There's typos in there, but we've got a significant number of comments that have come in, and we have been, over the last year and a half, out there explicitly extracting input from working groups, fellows, the CAB, and other places. We want to talk about what we've got so far, just at a top level. We're not going to go into details on that. Then we want to talk about what are some of the formats that we're considering, just to help with some discussion purposes. The overall structure, how are we going to, does the handbook perfect like it is? Probably not. What can we do based on how system engineering is involved and usage of the handbook is involved to make it be more effective for people, for those users and use cases? We want to talk about our plan going forward and how you can become engaged, and then just the top level schedule that we have right now, the preliminary schedule. So those are our topics, but being a town hall, what we really want is the engagement from all of you as well. So let's just step through these. So first off, the handbook is right here. This is our handbook, and there's really 3 very closely interrelated products. There's our handbook, there's the ISO standard. It's ISO IEC IEEE 15288 is the International System Engineering Lifecycle Standard that the handbook is based on. So INCOSE is involved with the development of that. In fact, the editor and the lead editor are both engaged with INCOSE. And there's also the Guide to the System Engineering Body of Knowledge is another key product that INCOSE supports with the CERC, with IEEE and INCOSE. That's a joint product. That's a wiki-based product. The idea here is that the purpose of the System Engineering Handbook is to reflect a fairly stable state of the practice. And why we say it needs to be fairly stable is because it's what drives certification. Those of you that have gone through the ASEP and CSEP process realize that the basis for the exam is the INCOSE handbook. The SEBOC is meant to reflect both state of the practice, but also state of the art. It's got a sandbox area for new ideas, new concepts, emerging concepts get entered in there, refined. When they become mature, we reflect them in the handbook. When the handbook is updated, it gets reflected in the SEBOC. And of course, the handbook, one of our requirements is that, at least from a life cycle process perspective, we exactly match 15288. The SEBOC matches 15288, but it also goes beyond that because there's emerging areas that are there. But it's also, then 15288 has some addendums, there's other specific standards. Of course, we try to shape, and INCOSE tries to shape the overall vision of the industry. We're trying to reflect all these things in here. So this is a top-level view of some of the key relationships and how the handbook fits in. I'm going to have call-out buttons on the bottom. Some of our different editors are focal points for this. So if you have questions or comments or inputs to this, Gary is our focal point for these interrelationships between these different documents. If we look at the users and use cases, these are the primary and secondary users. The primary users are ones that we feel are going to directly use the handbook. Secondary ones are going to interface with it on an irregular, a less frequent basis. But our primary one, of course, we're targeting for our system engineering practitioners, both novice and seasoned, as we'll say. So we want this to be a place where they go for a source for the state of the practice of system engineering. Another key use case is the certification program. We work very closely with the Certification Advisory Group, the CAG, to help shape that. Again, that's the body of knowledge, but there's a relationship there between INCOSE, the certification program, and the people who are getting certified, who are desired to get certified. Another are course developers. This is from academia, it's from the training industry. Those types of individuals are also care about and use the handbook a lot. And the last one is the tool providers. This can provide some guidance as to the tools and what tools could be used to help enable some of these processes. So these are our primary users and use cases. The secondary ones are people that have more of an ancillary relationship with systems engineers, but there's people that want to be system engineers. We've got people that want to become part of this community of system engineers. They would be able to reference the handbook to see what it entails. And of course, there's the large community that interacts with system engineers. We don't work in a vacuum. We've got people like marketing provide us business development or sales, provide us the voice of the customer, regulatory, project managers, project engineers, even the engineering domains that interface with system engineers so they can understand what the discipline is. So these are our primary and secondary users and use cases. And again, the editor that's the focal point for this is USync. He's the focal point for this if you have questions or comments. We have been over the last year and a half, well, actually, with comments, we've been getting those since our 4th edition was released. But we've been working on and trying to get inputs from the INCOSE community. So the primary places that we get inputs, of course, comments. Anyone that's using the handbook in Appendix G, there's a comment form. They can send us comments. I got my most recent comment, I think Danny sent to me last Tuesday or something. So we're getting comments that come in. We've also had IW and IS input sessions, including at this IW. I'll talk about that as part of the engagement. There's one more open session for you to come in and contribute. We capture that information. We also sent out a survey about what should we keep, what should we get rid of, what's no longer useful, what's missing, what are some significant updates, and just any other comments that they have. And we sent that to the Corporate Advisory Board. We sent it to the working groups. We sent it to the Certification Advisory Group. We sent it to the fellows. We sent it to certification training providers. And they gave us inputs. We are then actually following our own process. We're going to categorize those into stakeholder requirements, handbook or system requirements, and then author requirements down at the section level. But of course, we've got to architect our handbook as well. That's the structure. Not only the handbook, but the overall environment that it's in. I did want to point out that we're thankful that we've partnered with Vitech. We've been using their core tool in previous versions, and now their Genesis tool to do the architecture and design of the handbook. All those IPO diagrams are part of an underlying model, and we thank Vitech for that. We're seeing that our requirements process is getting so complicated too that we are partnering with JAMA to help us do the requirements as well. So we're trying to follow our process and use some of our tools as well. The focal point for this is myself. And this is just a summary. This is an eye chart. I don't tend to read this, but these are some of the additional topics that we're getting. So some of the what we believe might be state of the practice. We're also getting some ideas on architecture. We get some that are maybe not as constructive, which is like throw it away and start over. We take that under advisement, but some people want it shorter, some people want it longer. So we're not going to be able to satisfy everyone. So we're going to balance these inputs. We're going to make some decisions to go forward as a community. And we've got different formats that we're getting suggestions on as well. We'll talk about that in the next slides. So talking about formats, we used to self-publish when it was the white-covered version, the 3.x, the 3, 3.1, 3.2, 3.2.1, 3.2.2, and even the previous ones INCOSE self-published. We made a decision for the 4th edition to work with Wiley to do more of an official publication. So we changed it from versions to editions. So it was the 4th edition instead of version 4. Now we're working on the 5th edition. So when we went to Wiley, we've always had a hard copy and a PDF that was available. Even we self-published, we retained that with Wiley, but working with Wiley, we also introduced an ebook format that you could use on your Kindle or your Nook or something like that. You can buy that off of Amazon. So it's a fully functional ebook version. What we're looking at with the input that we're getting from our stakeholders is, even do we need hard copy anymore? Is this something that people like? We need your feedback on that. The PDF is kind of flat. The ebook, are people using that? But people are saying, do we need a dynamic website that's hyperlinked and things like that? Do we need an executable model that people can take of the processes and tailor it for their different execution? Of course, we also need to keep in mind that the 4th edition has been translated into several different languages, usually by several different chapters. We need to be considerate of those translations and the new requirements that we're looking at in terms of accessibility. We're working with the INCOSE organization to figure out what are our accessibility requirements for people that need accommodations. So what are those things that are going to influence the format of our handbooks? That's another thing that we're looking at. And I should point out that Tom is the focal point for that. So if you have suggestions, comments, if you know of new technology, please interface with Tom on that. The next one is we need to figure out the structure of our handbook. If we look at this handbook, Odile created a very good graphic that shows us kind of graphically how our current handbook is organized. We've got the core of our handbook, if you'd look at it, I think would be fairly to say is life cycle process centric. We've got a lot of content in chapters 4, 5, 6, and 7 on technical management, organizational project enabling, and agreement process. So I should say agreement and organization. There's a lot of focus there. We've got some introductory stuff. We've got some life cycle stuff in chapter 3. We've got some tailoring here. We had the tailoring process. We added a new section on tailoring for domains. We're getting feedback from the working groups, especially the domain working groups, as to how to better represent that. And then different ways that we apply it in product lines, services, enterprises, very small and micro enterprises, things like that. Then we had some things that cut across all the processes, so we put those in chapter 9, and then chapter 10 are all what we referringly call to as the ILITs, the engineering specialties. And we put those in, of course, alphabetical order, so we didn't have to have the arguments about which one went first. So that's what we did with chapter 10. So is this the right format? Is this the right way to get the most value for our stakeholders and our use cases out of the handbook? We're having those discussions. So some of the considerations that we're looking at for this, we're looking at, of course our handbook needs to, again, our goal was to reflect state of the practice. It should be complete it needs to be complete for nothing else as a basis for certification. It's got to be standalone to some effect, but of course it has to have references to other sources of information. Each chapter, and maybe even each topic, should be structured so as the greatest extent possible, it should be independent. But there should also be this complementary nature of these topics that go on. But of course, not redundant. We don't want redundancy in there. Similar topics. We try to get similar topics at a similar level of detail. Doesn't mean everything is going to be exactly the same, but we try to get that balance as editors, working with the working groups. And of course, one of our requirements is that the things that do relate to our life cycle processes should match up with the next version of 15288 that's in work right now that we also anticipate will be released in the same time frame. And we also need to consider not just the handbook. As good system engineers, we need to understand the context that we're part of. What are the other documents that are going to be surrounding this? Are we going to have multiple volumes? Are we going to have referenced appendices? Are we just going to reference other working group products? These are things that we need to think about from an architectural perspective. And the focal point for this is Odile for the structure. And lastly, again, the engagement plan going forward. There's different ways that each of you can get engaged. So depending on the role that you're in. I've kind of highlighted in blue who you need to go contact if you want to get engaged. But each of you can be engaged some way, I promise you about that. So if nothing else, you can show up at our open session tomorrow from 3:30 to 5 in Suite 527. All of you are welcome to attend there and give us any inputs. If you have some additional things upon reflection, or if there's not enough time for your question at the mic, come to our session. We welcome your inputs. We capture those. I promise you we'll capture them. I can't promise you we're going to use every aspect of everything everyone says, because there might be some conflicts, but we're going to capture all the inputs and disposition them appropriately. The other thing, if you're in a working group Several working groups already have scheduled the editors to come in at their working group sessions. If you're a working group lead or you're a member of a working group, talk to your working group lead and see if we can work out a time where at least one or several of the editors can come to your working group for the next 3 days and talk to you about the handbook and your sections in more detail. We would welcome that. Now we have to work the scheduling because we have other meetings and stuff, but I'm sure we can find a time where we can meet as a working group as well. So those are 2 ways we can engage at this IW. The other way, beyond this IW, the 2 primary ways that you engage are going to be through creation or through review of the product. If you want to create something, we have somewhat of a joke within our editor community. It's, if you like what's in this handbook, of course you give credit to the editors, right? If you don't like what's in this handbook, go talk to the specific working group that contributed that section, okay? That's a joke. But there's some truth to that joke, okay? The main authors, where we have a section that maps to an INCOSE working group, the authority in INCOSE is that working group. I'll just pick on something. If we want something with system of systems, we're going to go to the system of systems working group and say, here's your current text updated. If we need something from the infrastructure working group, we're going to go to the infrastructure working group and say, update this section. So if you don't like what's in a particular section, go get engaged in that working group and change that working group's opinion about what they're putting in the handbook. So now where we don't have mapping to working groups, we're going to reach out to chapters. There are certain chapters that are engaged in certain activities, and where we don't have a chapter, we're going to engage individual subject matter experts. So those are ways you can get involved with creation. For review, this product is going to go through a review cycle through the INCOSE Assistant Director for Technical Review. Right now, Lynn Yee, we don't know if that'll be the same Associate Director by the time we get to review, because things change, but we can talk to Lynn Yee right now, and you could get involved and volunteer to review, not just the handbook, but any INCOSE product. You can also, we're going to reach out to chapters, especially non-native English speaking chapters, to review the handbook and say, can you understand this? Could we do things better? Could we word things better? Could we eliminate some false friends that really are detrimental to the understanding of content? And then we're also going to work with collaborating organizations for certain sections as well. Now, and the main person for this collaboration is Bernardo for those types of things. And then the last slide is just an overview of the schedule. Our target date right now, our preliminary schedule, is that we're going to release the 5th edition at the International Symposium in 2023, wherever that is. And we're following our INCOSE technical development process using their technology or their terminology. We got an initial TPP approved. We're going to be looking from a working group perspective for your inputs. The tentative plan is between IS-20 and IW-21. So this fall, we're going to give you your existing sections, and we're going to say, update these to reflect state of the practice, your first draft of those. If there's new sections, we're going to work with work groups, say, give us your first draft of this. We'll consolidate that. Then if you want to be a reviewer between the IW and IS is when you'd review, then we'll have updates again based on comments and any other state of the practice that's changed since then. That'd be the working group's final updates would be here between the IW, or the IS and the IW, between early 2021 or late 2021. So this is the top level schedule. With that, what I'd like to do is open up the floor for comments and discussions, please. So please come to the mic. And I'm going to invite all my editors to help answer questions.
Thank you for this presentation, Dave. I have a question regarding the last slide on the preliminary timeline. I see no adherence with a potential evolution of the ISO 15288. Is it something what is your plan regarding this alignment?
Yeah, so I'll just repeat the question. The question is, I think Frederick brings up a good question about how does this relate to the 15288 update. I'm going to turn over to editor Gary, if that's all right. Gary has been selected as the lead editor for 15288, so he can give us a brief update on 15288 and the relationship.
All right, so we just, in the November meeting for ISO, agreed to establish the study group for 15288 for its revision. All right, I'm leading that, and David Endler is the co-lead. And So that will go through May, and then we'll end up doing a working draft and getting a new work item proposal started probably by the end of the year. Okay, so that generally takes about 2 to 3 years for revision. So when you add all that up, it ends up that it's pretty well aligned with this schedule. And, you know, so as we've been working in trying to plan what we're doing with the handbook, we've been cognizant of what's the schedule there and trying to retain that alignment. So as you know, we've done, as you can see in that one chart that Dave put up, it's, you know, there's a lot of pieces we've been able to, over the years, bring into alignment, working together to have some convergence in the concepts and terminology for systems engineering. We'd like to try and retain that. And so we're trying to align schedules as much as we can. Does that answer the question?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Please go to the mic.
I am a working group chair for the requirements, and I would love to have you at one of our meetings. So how can I coordinate a copy of these slides and an opportunity to find out which one was my editor again?
Well, I think these slides are going to be posted someplace, but if we need to do it sooner, I'd be happy. Just send me a note, and I'd be happy to send them directly to any working group chair. But why don't we talk after the session and see when we can come in and meet with the requirements work group? We'd love to talk to you about that.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm following her by accident, but appropriately, because the requirements working group, when there wasn't an IVV working group, they've done the requirements guide, and now they've done about 147 pages in current draftish of the guide to V&V. We're going to be doing an integration guide. How are you going to tie or connect these? Because one of the things, the difference in users, we've always had in the handbook the issue of too much volume, and it seems like some of the stuff that people want to put in the handbook could really go in these guides if they're connected.
So I think what Jim is saying is that the different work groups have different products as well too. And what we like to do is, again, keep the handbook standalone as much as possible, yet point to the detailed guides. So ideally, like, let's just take the requirements work group as one of our longest and largest work groups. They have an excellent guide for writing requirements, right? So we don't want to duplicate that guide for writing requirements in the handbook. What we want is in the requirements section as part of the, right now what we do as part of the elaboration is we highlight the characteristics of both individual and sets of requirements. And then we point to the guide for writing requirements. I would encourage every working group to create a robust set of products related around your particular working group topic. For integration, create that guide for integration, and then what we want to do is summarize the essence of integration, make sure it's consistent with the other processes, and then reference your guide. So for every working group, requirements, integration, we had some discussions with some of the domain working groups. Get a good domain guide for a particular, say automotive or infrastructure, or power and energy, and then summarize that, make it be, we had some excellent discussions at our open session yesterday with the infrastructure work group, and say make it be almost a marketing so that they want to go get the working group product. And so if you're in that domain, you get exposure to what this is, and you get more of those details. That's our vision, but do you have any, is that consistent with what you're thinking?
It is, and also originally you had a wide range of potential users,
Yeah.
and it seems like you could address some of the users, and then for the more experienced and want more guidance, you don't have to cover it, you just point to it.
We point them, you're right. The seasoned practitioner, they're going to get some of their guidance from pointers to the detailed guidance. I think it's an excellent point. Yes?
Yeah, good morning. I'm Jean-Luc Garnier from AFIS. I see on that slide some relationship with, for example, AAP 48. How do we expect to collaborate with NATO and possibly some other standardization bodies?
Okay, I'll let Gary deal with that one.
That slide goes beyond just what we're doing with the handbook, okay? That slide is really looking at the whole range of the things that we've been involved in, not only through INCOSE, ISO, IEEE, and others, but in the whole community that's been working together to try and bring a consistent view of systems engineering. But like AAP 48, you know that that's been based on, it's basically an addendum for 15288.
Yes.
Just as the one that was developed for the US DoD, in which it doesn't actually repeat what's in 15288, but instead goes through and says, you know, these things apply, this modification or this addition.
And regarding that NATO document, I want to state the fact that within this extension, we have a very huge explanation about integrated logistics and support, how we can deploy system over the I would say, the whole life cycle. And this is really what we need to extend if we want to be, I would say, more agile within the system engineering activities over the whole life cycle. So I appreciate this reference to be on the board.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Robert Halligan, Project Performance International. My question, guys, is whether the new handbook will talk more about systems engineering and less about systems engineers. From my experience, the preoccupation with systems engineers alienates the 20 million engineers worldwide who could and should be practicing systems engineering and can be within INCOSE's prospective membership umbrella.
Well, I think it's a good input. So I think that comes back to our look at our users and use cases. Even though the users might be are practicing system engineers, like you say, other people besides systems engineers do system engineering, I think, to your point, right? Is that the essence of your point?
My point is that systems engineering is or should be about the practice of engineering, not something different or special.
Okay. Well, we'll definitely look at that. I know we've got some inputs from you on that we're looking at, and we appreciate the inputs that you've given us on that. Thank you. We've got about 2 minutes left, so just for timing purposes.
This might be bigger than 2 minutes. I'm John Palmer, Seattle Metro Chapter. The context and the model topics, maybe from what we just heard. It's interesting that you're putting this into VITEC and JAMA. The DEIX working group is putting things into a Cameo enterprise architecture. We've got some other artifacts that are of interest. I'm wondering whether there's an opportunity here maybe to engage something like the tools integration, interoperability, and perhaps some of the other activities to actually show how we could integrate those pieces and as an enterprise, meaning INCOSE as an enterprise, start to become more modeled in our actual practices.
I think it's a good suggestion. We should have, I think, some follow-on discussions with that. Thank you.
Hi, John Clark, INCOSE Training Working Group. Quick couple of questions on your previous slide there. What are the plans for updating 15288.2, 24748, IEEE 1220, SAE 1001, the Defense Acquisition Guidebook, and IEEE 12207, all the documents in your context diagram? Thank you.
Gary, you want to take that one?
What was the question?
So I think the question was, I'll try, but I think that keep in mind as INCOSE, we're responsible for this. So this is what we're talking, this is the topic of this one. If you're asking what's going to be the update for these other IEEE and ISO documents, they'll go through the normal ISO and IEEE channels to do their updates of their documents. And if it's the DAG, you know, that'll be the U.S. Department of Defense will be updating their DAG Chapter 4 according to their process. We, as INCOSE, we try to influence that and try to encourage consistency, but that's not INCOSE. Those are beyond INCOSE. But INCOSE tries to influence that, and we have participation that tries to help with that. I mean, would you like to add anything, Gary?
Yeah, our standards department is trying to be cognizant of all the things that are going on and making sure that we do influence the right things at the right time. Okay, so those will change over time, though.
All right, I think our time is done. Thank you very much. Thanks for the great questions, too. We appreciate it.